I once read something from Roald Dahl. I think it was on his tombstone. It said, I burn the candle at both ends, and I know it won't last the night. But both to my enemies and my friends, it gives off an awesome light.
So you're described in Wikipedia, and I would have used the same description, as an entrepreneur, a businessman, a philanthropist, and author.
Again, so we managed to keep it afloat, and we relisted it in 2007 for about 200 million. And then we sold it eventually in 2014 for 3.5 billion. Yeah, good journey. If you're a driven person, right, and generally most people that want to make something of themselves work hard, they aspire to be better. And if that's the case, you're trying to have a work-life balance, you're going to fail at one or the other because you're going to compromise, right? And being driven, you're going to find that's uncomfortable. But you don't need to compromise. You need to integrate work and life. You can have an accountant or an advisor that is a functional element, but actually if someone understands you deeper than that, then they have a longer view, a deeper view into what the outcome is desired to be, right?
Welcome everyone to one of the very first series of the SRLV Not Just a Number podcast, where we're focusing on serious, successful entrepreneurship, how business is done, and trying to illustrate this with live stories from what I call the best in class of entrepreneurs. And with no further ado, I'd like to introduce my friend and client, Michael Tobin, OBE. Mike,
thank you very much.
So much for finding the time to do this.
Absolute pleasure, Mark.
I've taken a Wikipedia page because I wanted to make sure I wasn't straddling the lines of what you and I's private affairs that's already in the public domain. So I'm going to use this as my template to talk to you about your career and what's made you make certain decisions about your career. So you're described in Wikipedia, and I would have used the same description, as an entrepreneur, a businessman, a philanthropist, and author. So I want to look at your business career. Right. We'll add more stuff as we go along. Bon vivant, let's look at your business career first, Mike. You made your name initially in data centers. What drew you to that?
I didn't do my due diligence properly, actually. That was the only reason.
We all fall into these traps. Yeah.
So I've been in technology for 45 years now, and started as an apprentice at 16 with repairing robotics, right, with Rockwell, and spent a long time abroad, lived for more than a dozen years in France, a few years in Germany, a few years in Copenhagen. And in 2001, when the dot-com bubble crashed, I thought I had a 3-year-old and a 1-week-old born in Copenhagen and Frankfurt, respectively. And I thought, better hunker down, better get back to the UK, probably safer there in technology when the bubble had burst. So I came back, and the first business I saw was a company called Redbus. And it was listed on the UK exchange. It had raised about $500 million, spent it. It was burning about 2.6 million a month and only had 6 million in the bank. So it was about to go bankrupt. And I didn't know what a data center was, nor did most people, actually, to be fair. They were completely empty, burning cash like nobody's business. And they were just ahead of their time. So I got in there and thought, holy crap, I'm about to need another job in 3 months if we carry on like this. So I kind of burst into a boardroom and threw my toys out the pram a little bit with the directors. The CEO and the chairman promptly resigned, and I was thrown the keys. And basically managed
on the basis, if you think you can do better, here
yes,
you go.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so we took it private for around 6 million quid. I managed to get a bunch of investors from all sorts of random places, complete luck, and a little bit of sort of ballsy attitude, and we relisted it again. So we managed to keep it afloat, and we relisted it in 2007 for about 200 million. And then we sold it eventually in 2014 for 3.5 billion. But yeah, good journey.
A good journey. And you merged with Telecity
Indeed,
in the meantime.
during that time, yes. So when we took it private, there was another company very similar to us, also listed on the UK exchange, part listed, part owned by 3i. And so we merged the two together and created kind of like the game over play for Europe for data centers. And slowly the internet grew, everyone started using things more, mobile phones became prevalent. And it sounds strange, doesn't it, talking about a time when mobile phones weren't prevalent, but when you used to have dials, you went around like that. So yeah, that was kind of just good timing, a bit of hustle and a lot of luck.
Well, all successful entrepreneurs say luck, but it's not luck. We know that. Also, environmentally, I was interested. Again, this is just from Wikipedia. You never told me this, but you got a global standard, a gold standard of the Green Grid Global Consortium.
Yeah.
So this was an environmental kind of aspiration, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that was before sustainability and everything was a thing, right? So no one really cared about it then.
It's back in 2010, so I should have said a long time ago.
Yeah, this is a long time ago, and basically data centers, they use a lot of energy, right? And currently there's about 55 gigawatts of data center capacity today in operation, with another 150 or so in manufacture and build. That's enough to power every single home in America, right? And by 2030, you've got probably about 12% of all America's power will be consumed by data centers, and 4% of the globe's power will be consumed by data centers. So that's greater than the airline industry. So, you've got to think about the impact of this, right? How do you power them? How do you diffuse the heat that is generated from all these servers that are running in the data centers? What can you do efficiently with that heat? So we used to build data centers in proximity to hospitals. We'd run pipes under the ground to heat the hospital free of charge with the excess heat that we generated in the data center and things like that. So it wasn't only kind of lip service to sustainability. It was also trying to do good with the outcomes of what we do.
Has that been perpetuated in the industry?
Very much so, yeah. So now it's almost table stakes, right? So if you want Microsoft as a customer, Google as a customer, then you've got to show them that you've done everything possible to minimize the impact to the environment.
Great stuff, and well done. Let me get into the interesting part of your career. And when I say interesting, I get to 2014 when you got your OBE on the Queen's birthday honours list. But you stepped down from corporate life, if you like, as CEO, and you formed a company, which I'm delighted you did, called Tobin Ventures Limited.
Yep.
When you and I met.
That's right.
The two weren't linked. And since then, you've had a lot of non-executive roles.
Yeah.
And what I'm interested in, for the benefit of this podcast, is how you determine, you're a good businessman, you know how to run a big business, you have that ability and that knowledge and experience, but you're very entrepreneurial. I know you are a very creative person with a very, very strong vision and the tools in your box, if you like, to make things happen. How would you determine what you want to do from the plethora of opportunities that do come your way?
Yeah, I think you've got to look at, does the offering of that company deliver to a market that needs it, right? And that's not always apparent, right? And sometimes you can have a product that the market doesn't know it needs yet, but it will do. A bit like the data centers in 2001. But generally, there's got to be a right to win, right? So why does this company have a right to win business? And if you can see that as opportunity, that's a good start. And then it's people, right? So you've got to have energetic people. You've got to have kind of the right attitude. And I'm always looking. So every time I've recruited people, I've never really focused on CVs and things. I've looked at their attitude first, because I can train skills, but it's really hard to train attitude. So if they got a can do, I mean, one of the biggest things that I hate in sort of people around the business world is they start a statement with the problem with that is, right? It's like, tell me how you can improve something, or tell me that you're going to add to an idea, but don't tell me the problem and not give me an alternative, right? And that kind of attitude really frustrates. So weeding out the negatives very quickly and getting the best people you can afford around you at any given time. That's kind of how and at the end of the day, then, that the product itself doesn't actually matter, right? It's do you have a right to win? And are there really, really positive minded people?
Yeah. And I just, again, something I know from our experience together, you're not just a passenger in this. You're not just there for a paycheck and whatever. You actually involve yourself significantly in that business, and I think a real commitment.
Private equity, will put the money to work, but they're a bit like politicians, really. They've never had a proper job, right? So they'll come along and say, we want to invest in this because we want to make money, but we don't know how to run it. We don't know how to do these things. So the first thing they do is appoint someone that has got a track record in doing that. And then my job then again is just simply to say, do I trust the leadership? Right? Can I work with this? If I can't, they get replaced very, very quickly. Because I don't really want to be hands-on in a business, right? So I've got a dozen chairman roles or so at the moment around the world, and that would not be possible if I was hands-on in them. But up front, I'm very, very quickly hands-on to get the people in that I can then trust to run the business. And then I act a bit like a sort of an interface. I described it once as, if you remember your Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, a Babel fish, which was the translator device they used to put in their ear between the private equity shareholders and the management that are running the business. Because very often they're saying very similar things, right? They all want to make money. They want to drive successful businesses, but they're using different words and they're using different, descriptions of the journey. So a lot of my work is to translate those different sort of languages into let's harmonize and make sure we're in the right direction.
You have a workload which is enormous. You have talk about keeping plates spinning. You've got a lot of plates spinning, and it's never enough. Because you like to do. You've written books. You like your charity work.
Yeah, very much so.
Tell us what drives you and how you manage to cope with that and deal with the sort of excessive amounts of activity that you're always involved with.
So I once read something from Roald Dahl. I think it was on his tombstone. It said, I burn the candle at both ends, and I know it won't last the night. But both to my enemies and my friends, it gives off an awesome light. And I kind of like to pack as much into life as possible because you just don't know what's around the corner, right? And I get scared of sleeping. Right, because it's like, oh my God, I'm not doing something. And I know occasionally I have to just fall off, right? But I think for me, I've been so really lucky from where I started to be successful that my wife Shalina and I, we do so much for charity because we feel obliged to give back. It's almost like an embarrassment of luck. So we put as much back as we can. I like to impart ideas through books. I do a lot of podcasts. I do lots of sort of public speaking, and then lots of social activity as well, right? So we host a lot, and we have lots of good times too. And it's just filling the day. I can't. When I did my 40 marathons, I was starting at 4:30 in the morning and finishing at 9 o'clock.
I remember.
And so every day I would finish in the office of a company that sponsored me for that day. We raised a couple of million for the then Prince's Trust, now the King's Trust, and people were coming in at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I was doing a keynote speech to them, saying like, "When was the last time you said I don't have time to go to the gym? I've just finished a marathon." Right. And you've just walked into the office. Right. So, tell me about time. Tell me if, and really what it is they don't have the true commitment to do something. So you change your commitment, you find lots of time.
Let me just talk about charity because, it's when I say in prayer, it's laudable rather than impressive. Action for Children, the Prince's Trust. I was going to mention you, Mary. I remember you toenails dropping off during that. The Brain Tumor Charity. I remember you going with
Trek to the
Lewis
South
Moody
Pole.
down to
Yeah,
the South
absolutely.
Pole. We raised
Yeah.
a lot of money there. Duke of Edinburgh Awards, British Asian Trust, Lumba Foundation, which I didn't know about, and Make-A-Wish, and now Teens Unite as well, which is great.
Which is amazing. Yeah. So my wife has started these supper clubs where, during COVID, we got, we were looking at kind of what industry was going to be the most impacted, because we work with Calm as well, which is generally men's mental health, right? And that was particularly close to our heart. So we said, what industry would be really, really badly hit? All industries were badly hit by COVID, but the hospitality industry in particular was a very, very tough time for them. And so my wife started doing podcasts with all the Michelin chefs, and to keep them current. And that was, and then we were buying the home kits and doing all those. We couldn't eat them all because we were buying so many, but and just promoting it all. So as a result of that, we built up a lot of friendships in the sort of chef community, and then we also know quite a lot of sort of B-listers, C-listers, Z-listers, A-listers, and so we thought, what could we do to bring that together, right? So we started these supper clubs, and my wife started it, and where you have a Michelin chef, fantastic environment. To get in the door, you have to donate to the charity, and you get a keynote speaker. So this one's Karen Millen coming up this year. So she'll tell her story, and the charity is chosen by the keynote speaker. So her sort of close to the heart charity is Teens Unite.
Excellent.
It's teenagers with coping with cancer. And, there's so many good causes out there.
A lot of your causes are children focused as well.
Yeah,
the sleeping out charity.
That's right.
As well.
Yeah. So sleeping on the streets, that was a thing I did for many years with CEOs around the UK. They had to pay £10,000 for the most expensive room on the cobbles in front of Paternoster Square. But again, to the charity, it was 150 grand a year that they wouldn't have had, and it cost them nothing. It was just basically people in sleeping bags. So we try and think of things that don't impose lots of work to the charity, and we do all the work, and we try and kind of just maximize the return.
Absolutely, and people that you're trying to attract to donate.
Yeah.
Are time poor. That's the one thing they all have in common.
Exactly, yeah.
So you make it very, very easy to participate.
And try and make it an event that people will remember, right? So I remember that the head of, the CEO of ITN was one of the guys once that was sleeping in the streets with me at St. Paul's. And about 5 o'clock in the morning, he said, Mike, because once it starts to get a little bit no one sleeps, right? You can't sleep because there's foxes the size of dogs running around. You got the dust carts coming and waking you up. You got real homeless people that are trying to steal your shoes and all this sort of stuff, right? And at 5 o'clock he said, this has been enlightening for me. I really understand what it's like to be homeless. I said, well, you kind of do. It's a window into that world, but you kind of don't as well, because we as sort of resilient humans, right? If you have an end point, right? You can survive because it's going to end, right? So you can be resilient to 5 o'clock in the morning, then you go home and have a shower and you're back to. But if you're truly homeless and you don't have an exit, right? That's where hopelessness kicks in as well, and that's where the downhill really, really comes in, and that not ending challenge, that's hard to feel unless you're really in that situation.
Yeah. Well, there are so many worthy causes.
Yeah, there are.
It's very, very difficult to get around to them all. I'm just aware of the time, and I don't want to keep you for too long.
No,
Can I
you're
talk
very
about
welcome.
some of your books? Again, I love the titles. Forget strategy, get results.
Yep. So that was my first book. That was really a kind of meander through those early years in Telecity and how to impart messages. So I believe that leaders, not managers, you should be a leader, and your only job is to create leaders. That's all you should do. And so you empower people around you, allow them to fail, right? Once, but learn from. So if you're trying to do things that have never been done before, for sure people are going to get it wrong, right? And that's how you push the envelope, is keep saying, okay, well, that didn't work, so what will work, And so if people are empowered, but also confident. There's no fear of failure. The production just goes through the roof. And so you build these teams. And even back then in the early 2000s, I'm still working with the same people now. Because I know them, when I start with a new company, I'll phone one of them up and say, I need a proper CEO in here. Do you want to come? Right? And so I'm still working with a lot of them around the world. And they, they do feel like a proper family. But for example, I'll tell you a couple of stories on that one. When we merged Telecity and Redbus, they were all scared because, merging means consolidation, means job losses, but all this. And I said, look, don't worry, don't be afraid here. Everything's going to be all right. But of course, they were still worried. So I took them. I said we were going up to Edinburgh for a whiskey tasting board meeting. But on the road up, we took a coach up, and the Firth of Forth, as you cross the old bridge and you double back on yourself into the estuary, there's a huge aquarium, absolutely huge, and it's probably 25 meters deep. And it's got, you feel like you're actually in the ocean. And so they were a bit confused. We stopped there. And as they walked in, they thought we were just getting a sort of comfort break. And I said, 2 by 2, can you go and get your wetsuits on, put the breathing apparatus? And I went, what? But they did it. And then as they got everything with their flippers, and they flipped their legs over the top of this aquarium, which was really deep all the way down. Then they saw the shark fins floating around in front of them. And they were just like this, and all of them went down, and all of them were on the seabed with sharks coming this close to you, 3-meter sharks, huge. And when they came out, I sort of had a debrief with them, and I said, well, how did you feel when you actually realized what you were about to do? And they terrified, absolutely. Like, where's my lawyer? I hate you. And I said, well, how did you feel when you were on the seabed and these things were right there? And they said, well, I was still scared, but it was exciting. It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe I was doing it. And I said, how did you feel when you came out? And they said, I don't want to do it again, but life-changing. I got stories to tell. And I said, well, every time you come across a situation where you're afraid, invariably you're overanalyzing it. It's probably you're thinking it's worse than it's ever going to be. Secondly, you're going to learn a lot about yourself. And coming out of it the other side, you're going to have incredible stories, a lot of experience, and all those things. So it's a journey of taking things at face value and not, being afraid of something in the future is like paying interest on a debt you haven't drawn, right? It's a waste of value.
Great analogy.
Yeah. So you take it and use it as a learning experience.
Great. I think you've already covered the content. The next book, Live, Love, Work, Prosper. This is your mantra. Do everything.
Exactly. So I think the whole point about it was that work-life balance. If you're a driven person, right, and generally most people that want to make something of themselves work hard, they aspire to be better. And if that's the case, you're trying to have a work-life balance, you're going to fail at one or the other, because you're going to compromise, right? And being driven, you're going to find that's uncomfortable. But you don't need to compromise. You need to integrate work and life. So if you can do that, and I'll give another example, right? Sporting example. So if your two loves are long distance running and weightlifting, right? And you want to win a gold medal, you're probably going to have to sacrifice one or the other of those two things, because long distance runners aren't particularly good weightlifters and vice versa. Or you could enter the decathlon, right, and be a quite good long distance runner and quite good weightlifter and get a gold medal at decathlon. So the 45-degree angle is where you're looking for in all these things. It's not an either or. So when and the book talks about ways to kind of integrate work, and especially for sort of young aspirational managers where there's a lot of competition at the office, and you're compelled to stay late, and you've probably got a young family at home, and your partner's saying, it's my turn to go out. Can you come and, put the baby to bed, sort of thing? And how do you play those off when your boss says, no, you've got to stay late tonight? But there are ways to get through that. And so that book talks about that.
Okay. Brilliant. I think, just bearing in mind that this is an SRLV, not just another podcast, I should talk to you about our relation. Now, we're friends. And I'm delighted that we are, and we've worked together well, I think, for a number of years,
over a decade,
and well over a decade, yeah. And there were two things that we say, which is on our website, and I haven't been clever enough to combine them into a single pithy phrase. But the two things that come across, and I think we are good examples of this, is that people and relationships come first, and that's our absolute banner headline, if you like. And the other thing is, excuse me, excellence is everything, which I know you value, you aspire to, and you insist on, people who provide you services to work to that standard as well.
Yeah.
And in an honest way, I'm taking a risk here. In an honest way, do you feel we kind of live up to that?
So I and I don't even remember how we got connected in the first place. But basically, I work on trust, right? And I the people I work with become friends, or we kind of don't work, right? And there's a lot around the kind of empathy, understanding, and I think you can have an accountant or an advisor that is a functional element. But actually, if someone understands you deeper than that, then they have a longer view, a sort of a deeper view into what the outcome is desired to be, right? And so, what I like about the way that we work together is, what my long-term intentions are, what my goals are, what my family dynamics are. So, in all cases, I'm confident that the advice that SRLV gives through yourself is geared to those outcomes. So there's never anything that you say that I think, that I have to think, is that right for any of those elements? I already know that that's been thought through. Yeah. So for me, there's a kind of an added layer of kind of pre-thought that comes into it. And, I couldn't imagine working with someone that doesn't have that now. It's, you're getting on a bit. What happens when you leave?
Where am
I going to go then?
It's all going to fall apart. I've been working very, very hard on succession planning. It'll be much better when I'm not here. But it's a long time. So I hope that I won't be here. But you're right, I am knocking on a bit. Thank you for mentioning it.
I think we're about the same age.
No, you're much younger.
No. I use good cream.
Well, maybe I should try. Mike, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
It's been absolutely enlightening, even for me, after all these years. It's lovely to hear these stories and what's driven you to your success. And my final word is, it's not luck that's got him to where he is.
Well, it's being surrounded by quality people like yourself.
And I think the world generally is a better place with the Tobin family.
Thank you very much. It's very sweet.
Thank you.